Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we'll be taking a look at BeQuiet Pure Loop 240mm. Something a little bit different for all you AIO fanatics out there. Okay, so today we're taking a look at the BeQuiet Pure Loop 240mm. This is part of a range actually of their kind of essential range. There's two of the sizes available. There's a 120 and also a 360. So depending on your chassis, you may wish to get a large one or you may wish to get a smaller one. But they've sent us this one, the 240mm, for review purposes. So really interested to see what it's like. This incorporates a new kind of pump technology. So rather than having the traditional pump and kind of water block combo, which is on the CPU, this one actually has moved that away from that central area and put it as an inline pump. So this benefits in multiple ways. It firstly gets away from the Acertech design technology and the licensing for that, so obviously they can make this a little bit cheaper, but also where the pump is mounted, because it's on a pipe, there is limited rumble to it. And from what I can tell, from what I've already seen from other reviews and also from the initial kind of product release of this, it is essentially silent. So the pump itself actually runs at 100% all the time, which means you've got really high water flow, and the fans themselves are controlled from your CPU header. So this is designed with simplicity in mind. You haven't got tons and tons of wiring, tons of cables, and you're not sure which plugs into which header. They've really simplified it to make it easy for the novice and also the more experienced as well. So we'll take a quick look at the packaging, see what we actually get inside. We'll also do a fitting in my own personal rig, and then I'll be doing some benchmarks, some testing on it, and then we'll come back at the very end with my final thoughts. So looking at the packaging itself, as you can see, it's the pretty much the standard kind of deal you expect from BeQuiet. They do use these very simplistic design language, which from a German company, I suppose you'd expect that. So you've got the slight colour accents of the orange on there, but predominantly we're looking at black, white and silver. As it says on the front, this is quiet and superior cooling. Well, quiet, that is very likely. BeQuiet are very well known for that, essentially, is in the name. But superior cooling, well, we'll see what that's actually like after testing. Also, it says there 240mm, so that is the size of this one. And actually, just from the initial look of it on the front there, it does look particularly stylish. Moving around to the side of the box, it tells you a little bit more about BeQuiet themselves. I'll give you some close-ups of that. And also, it's got some of the technical data. Again, you'll see that in some close-ups, so you can have a better look and pause the screen if you want to see more. Moving around to the back of the box, so we've got some information about the actual pump assembly itself. Also, it goes on to mention about the fans. So this does include the Pure Wing 2 fans, which are really good fans. And I've got a maximum RPM of 2000 RPM, PWM controlled, all that kind of usual stuff. Also, one of the really neat features of this particular AIO, a lot of people have concerns with AIOs about the water evaporating and over time kind of getting air bubbles in the system, which introduce noise and lower temperatures, etc. But actually what they've done with this particular version is you've actually got a filling port. So as time goes on and the fluid does tend to kind of evaporate or get used up or permeate, whatever the technical word is, you can actually refill it. And they also do include some actual coolant in the package as well, so you don't have to worry about going out and buying that as an additional extra. So yeah, another thing which is adding value to the package. Lastly, it talks about the actual kind of pump head, well, not pump head because there's no pump in there, but the actual water block assembly, which is finished in a really nice kind of brushed aluminium effect, and that's got a white LED around the outside. It is unfortunate that we don't have some RGB on here. It would have been nice to have seen some RGB, but then if you're not a big fan of RGB and you like your monochrome builds, then this is going to be right up your street. On the last side, there's a QR code which goes through and will link you to the installation instructions and more product information. So if you want to see more information, scan the QR code now. So that's it for the packaging. Let's see what we actually get inside. So let's go through the packaging bit by bit. So first of all, we've got, this is really cool, you've got a pre-filled coolant there. So again, if it does run a little bit low or for whatever reason, maybe you're just tampering and you undo the screw and let all the fluid out, then you can certainly replace it all with that. And that is a special mix, which is designed for water cooling. It's not just water out of a tap, so yeah, don't put water in, guys, it's not good. Next up, there are a pair of the Pure Wings 2 fans, as again, these are 2000 RPM, and generally these are actually pretty quiet in normal use. When they get up to 2000 RPM, as we found previously with pretty much all fans on the market, they can have a tendency to get a little bit noisy. Now they have rated this on their own site at kind of 25%, 50% and 100%, and actually even at full load, it looks around about 35 to 39 dB, which isn't quiet, but certainly is a little bit better than some of the other fans on the market. And realistically, when you've got your pump running at 100%, it's unlikely you're going to actually need the fans to be running at 100% as well. But again, we'll find out more in our testing later on. Also included, we've got some, whatever that is. And the more important one is the actual installation guide. Now this installation guide is absolutely awesome. So you've got QR codes in multiple languages and also for the various sizes. So there is a 120, a 240, a 280 as well, which I didn't mention earlier. So there's a 280. 280 is one of those odd sizes which really does cause problems with some people's systems because of the width, especially if you're top mounting. So it is available, but obviously do check clearances, that kind of thing, if you're planning on doing this. And then lastly, the 360mm, which you may find a little bit easier to mount in some systems. So it goes through, gives you a breakdown of all the individual components, and you've got some actually really nice information on there about how it all goes together for AMD systems and for Intel, etc. And it fits pretty much every socket ever made. So definitely if you're interested in modern stuff like LGA 1200 or AM4, yeah, no problems whatsoever. Even slightly older stuff, AM3 covered as well, older Intel brackets, no issues there whatsoever. And also some of the more obscure ones. Next up, we've got our installation kit and what I would consider to be a really measly amount of thermal compound. Now, I know times are hard, everyone's feeling the pinch a little bit, but really, that is a really, really poor showing. Thanks, BeQuiet. So going further into the accessories bag, so there's another section here which has got all of our CPU mounting equipment, and I'll see there's some cable ties as well, and that's always nice to see. So we've got a separate baggie for Intel and a separate baggie for AMD. The AMD one does look far easier to install, less bracketry involved, but essentially they work in a very similar way. So for the Intel one, put the back plate on, put the screws through, attach the top plates, job done. And with the AMD one, again, same deal, it uses the standard AMD back plate. So you remove the screws and the plastic clips which come as standard on the board and replace them with these with some spacers. So yeah, nice mounting mechanism there, I like that a lot. Also included, there's 8 long screws for attaching the actual fans to the radiator itself, and there's 8 of the smaller screws to actually attach the radiator to the case. And also we've got our powering system. So because of the way that this works with the fan running at 100% all the time, and also having the LED actually on the kind of the head itself, I keep on wanting to say pump head, but it's not a pump head, but you guys understand what I'm saying. So because of that, you can actually connect this directly to your SATA. So this takes out some of the guesswork when actually building the system. So one SATA connector, and then that terminates into 2 kind of almost like PWM style connectors. So one of which is to power the actual LED, and the other one is to power the pump. Simple. And the last one, which is basically a splitter. So this will enable both of the fans to be connected via PWM 4-pin straight into your CPU header on your motherboard. So you don't have to worry about, like I said earlier, you don't have to worry about, have I got an all-in-one or have I got a pump header, all that kind of complicated stuff. Do I have to configure it in any way special form? Do I have to adjust stuff? No, you don't. Literally install it, the pump will do its own thing, and then the CPU header will just adjust itself as it would normally. And the last thing obviously is going to be the actual unit itself. So let's take this out. So you've got a cardboard sleeve protecting the actual radiator. And as you can see, you've got the Pure Loop writing on there. That's on both sides, so depending on which way you mount it, that will be visible if you wanted it to be. And obviously with this, you don't have to have it just with those 2 fans. If you wanted to, you could have a push-pull setup. So if you want to go ahead and buy yourself another set of BeQuiet fans, you could certainly do that. You will need an additional splitter or some kind of hub to actually get all the fans to work together. But it's definitely possible if you wanted to, although realistically, it should work absolutely fine in the standard configuration. So the radiator itself is a relatively slimline and got some pretty sharp edges there, so not very rounded off on the edges, so make sure that obviously if you're looking for tolerances, make sure it all fits in. But yeah, certainly is a relatively slimline unit, certainly slimmer than things like the Arctic freezers, that kind of thing. Looking at the actual fins itself, it's a relatively dense setup in there. So yeah, that should be quite good for cooling, plenty of fluid going through there. And looking at the actual pipework, the pipework's actually relatively narrow, which is always good for cable management. And I'm really pleased to see that it doesn't have any accent colors on it. It's just black braiding, which is absolutely fine. That was one of the things which put me off with the Arctic freezer. They had some weird kind of logos or braiding on there. It just didn't look right in my opinion, but certainly did work very well. Another nice feature of this is obviously the pump is here. housed actually towards the radiator itself. And the way it works, it only pumps on one of the cables, so the other one actually gives you some ability to twist it. So as you can see there, that pipe twists straight through there. We'll give you some close-ups of that, but you get the idea. So you can have it on various different angles to suit, which is really cool. And again, from what I can tell, from what I've seen of previous reviews, this thing is absolutely silent, which is excellent, because that is one of the things which do annoy with water cooling setups. I can even hear my Fractal one in the background. I can just about hear the pump whine, which is a really weird pitch as well. It's quite annoying, but this shouldn't have that at all. And also because it's mounted on these kind of rubber and braided sections, that is going to absorb a lot of vibrations if there was any anyway. So yeah, really cool. Looking at the actual connector, so that is the connector which goes to the SATA connection. So again, the pump is on 100% all the time, so that's nice and easy. If you're having this top mounted, that's nice and easy. Just take that out the top of the case and hide it somewhere so you don't have a ton of wiring everywhere. Again, limiting wiring and clutter. Moving down to the actual head itself, and as you can see, it's got the BeQuiet logo plastered all over it, which is quite nice. And the surrounding edge is an LED, which we'll see when we fire this up a little bit later. Also as well, you've got some adjustment actually on the pipes themselves as well. So if you want a nice swoopy line of the actual pipe work, then you can certainly do that, or you can have a kind of top up, top down situation. Feels really good, and there's virtually no flex there, which is really good, really well made. And coming out the side, again, we've got the 2-pin connector which goes into that SATA plug, which will then illuminate logo around the outside with that white LED. Again, I would have loved to have seen an RGB setup on here, but again, it kind of adds to the price and all that kind of stuff. So I'm assuming if you don't plug this in, it won't have any detrimental effects. So if you don't want a white LED slap bang in the middle of your system, then you just leave that disconnected, but the pump will still run obviously from that connector there. Moving on to the base, so there's a nickel plated base and there is a protective cover on there, and that looks like it's been machined actually really nicely, almost a mirror finish. So yeah, that looks really nice and appears to have quite a nice coverage as well. So yeah, looking forward to installing this. And most of all, one of the easiest things to do, it's got a screw on the bottom, a screw on the top. So basically, once you've got the brackets in, it's very easy to do. So you don't have to worry about too much of trying to line up the actual head onto your motherboard and getting 4 screws in at the same time and getting it all lined up. You can just lightly do one up at the top and then do the other one at the bottom. This is going to be really, really simple to install. I should have mentioned also as well, on the radiator itself, there is the fill port there. So just a cross-headed screw, so if you need to fill it up or if it gets slightly empty, just have it in a kind of upright orientation, kind of like that, and then you can fill that up if you need to. Awesome stuff. So let's get it installed and see how it does. Okay, so we're getting the brackets put in, and I do apologise for the picture, the lighting isn't particularly good. But you see here we've got the bracket on the bottom, and this bracket is on the top swinging around, and essentially you put these little packing pieces on, and they go over the top of the original M4 mounting bracket, and you just swing that across there. It does want to fall off straight away, so this is ideally suited to mounting in a flat position rather than being vertical, but it still can be done. And put a screw in through, it's marked up on there, AM4, makes it nice and easy. Tighten those up. There was actually some washers included in the mounting, but as you can see there's 4 washers. Doesn't say what they're actually for, they're not in the instruction manual, so what I said about the instruction manual being brilliant, I take back. And this mounting mechanism is, yeah, it's okay, it does the job, but it's not brilliant. So yeah, anyway, let's get the radiator installed in the roof. So as you can see there, we've got the radiator assembled, so we've got the fans on there. So I've set it up so that it's designed so it's going to be installed that way round. So obviously we've got our cables coming out the back of the fans, so just make sure you put them on around the right way when you're actually assembling it. I didn't bother showing you guys how to put the screws into the fans because, well, very simple thing, just 4 screws, hold them in. You can turn them whichever way you want. I've got this set as exhaust, so when this is actually installed in the system, it's going to be pushing air through the top of the cage. So let's get this installed. So I put in the fan in, or the radiator in the top. It's a relatively straightforward process, so just get 1 screw in to start with, and generally you want to work kind of opposing corners, that way the middle one will be lined up. And also you don't need to hold it with your other hand for ages. And there we go. So we've got one screw in the front, one screw in the back. So now we can go ahead and put the rest of the screws in to keep it firmly attached. So with the unit installed, yeah, it looks pretty cool. And this is the two fan cables which are coming off, and these are then into a splitter, and that's going to make it into one CPU header. So what I'm going to do now is connect up this into the CPU header, which is towards the top of the board. In this position, your board may differ, but generally they tend to be in the kind of top position. And then what you can do is, depending on your motherboard or your case, then you can just tuck the rest of the wires through the back, through any sort of pokey holes or cable management routing sections. So now what we've got left to do is to connect up our pump. So that's going to be nice and easy. So I'm going to route that up through the top of here also, and just poke that through the back. And I'm not going to do the pump unit quite yet. So I'm not entirely sure which way I'm going to route that. I think I'll probably take it up through exactly the same way, but just so I can show you how that goes together, I'll do that at the very end. So next thing to do is to install the actual head onto the CPU. So let's grab some of our thermal paste and put a little blob in the middle. That stuff don't want to come out. Just spread it around a little bit just to start off with, and then the rest of the pressure from the actual plate will spread that out nicely once it's done. Very important, remove the protective coating and actually put it somewhere safe, just in case if you need to ever send the product back for any reason. It's always nice to put that back in so they know you've looked after it. So now we're going to install the head actually onto the CPU. So just try and get your wires and also your pipes in some kind of logical order. And I would generally start with the top screw into the mount, a couple of turns just to get it started, and then on the bottom section line it up also, a couple of screws, just get it going, and just keep going all the way until the screws stop. And there you don't over tighten them, because these are only plastic, the surroundings on there, so you do have to be a little bit careful with that. So that is nicely installed, and we can actually move those around a little bit if need be. So I think what I'm going to do with this, I'm just going to route it straight up through and straight out the back. So from the back, sorry about this rat's nest of cabling, but it is what it is. So this is our cable which is coming from the actual pump itself, and this is the cable which is coming from the LED. So all we need to do is to connect up our splitter, and that then terminates into a single SATA connection, which we've got routed down the bottom here, again into our rat's nest of cabling. I haven't made that particularly easy on myself, but you get the idea. So yeah, there's the cables that come from the fans into the splitter. So again, you can cable manage those kind of around here if you wanted to. In fact, while I'm here, I might as well just do that anyway, just to tuck those out of the way a little bit. Okay, you can go crazy and cable manage the hell out of it once you're done, but this is good for testing purposes, so I'm just going to see how things go. So that is it for the installation. All we need to do now is fire up and do some testing. Okay, so we finished doing the testing, and hopefully you'll see from some of the B-roll it fitted into the Lian 215 very nicely, and actually does look pretty decent in there. I was surprised the lack of RGB actually matched in with the rest of the system. We set it all to a nice white tone. It looked pretty good. So yeah, definitely thumbs up for that. Ease of installation, definitely, yeah, is extremely easy to do. There's very little you could do to actually make the process very much easier, other than possibly for the actual plastic lugs which go over the AM4 backplate. Would have been nice to have seen something on there to maybe hold it in place while you're doing it. It's a difficult thing to do, I know, but it would be a lot easier. If you're mounting it in the upright position, it is going to be a little bit more tricky. If you're doing it on the flat, ideally you want to do it with obviously, but really a motherboard that you can gain access to on the back, so you can actually support the back plate so it doesn't basically fall back through. So yeah, there are some things to consider when actually putting it all together, but it's no real struggle, and is pretty much like most other AM4 mounting systems that are on the market at the moment. You'd think by now, being that that kind of type of mounting has been out for the best part of nearly 20 years now, you'd think someone would have perfected it by now, but no, we're still waiting for that. So down to the actual performance itself, and performance wise, when they say it's superior, superior is a kind of slightly misleading term. It is good, don't get me wrong. Spoiler alert, yeah, it does fantastically well and is very much in keeping with things like the Freezer 240 and pretty much most of the other 240mm AIOs that I've actually used before. And when it comes down to noise, even at full blast, 1900 RPM is the most we managed to get out of these, about 1930 I think it was. It does get a little bit on the loud side, but certainly no louder than anything else in the system when you're at the kind of 70 degrees mark, so that's totally to be expected. And overall, yeah, I can agree, it is very, very quiet. The pump itself was the one thing which surprised me the most. The pump is totally silent. Even at that 100%, you can't really tell it's on. The only way I knew it was actually working is by actually holding it, and you could feel a very, very faint kind of vibrating from the motor inside, or maybe the flow of water, but you certainly can't hear anything at all. And in the actual pump head, or the head rather, not the pump head, the head, you can't hear a thing. The water traveling around the system is totally silent, and again, if it does get to the point where there's air in the system, then you can easily fill up from that screw hole, which is awesome. One thing I did notice as well, some people say with the two fixing point method, you don't often get a good coverage on the CPU, but as you can see, I've taken this out now because I did realise while I was doing this that my Lianli 215 has a problem with the RGB connection, so the case is being returned, so I'm stripped my system down. Yeah, it's been a long old day. I started this about 8 hours ago, but as you can see on the actual cold plate there, it's actually a really, really good application of paste. You saw how much we put on in the video there, so yeah, it's covered it exceptionally well. I'm very, very pleased with that. So you'll see a close-up of that also. When it comes to temperatures, now this is with a Ryzen 9 3900X. This is with precision boost overclocking on, and basically the system pretty much left as stock settings. It is an ASUS motherboard, so it does tend to spike those core temperatures and core voltage ratings a little bit, as some of you will know. So it does get a little bit warmer than some other systems. But pleased to say, at the lowest temperature recorded was 30 degrees, and that is a 22 degree ambient room, so 8 degrees over ambient. Yeah, totally happy with that. That's fantastic performing. In normal Windows use, kind of just plodding around, a couple of windows open, Discord, that kind of thing, you're looking around about 40, 45. So again, there are spikes up higher, 55, and it does drop down lower to like 33 or something. But essentially, you're looking around about the kind of 40 degrees mark, I would say, is a pretty much an average one. The highest temperature recorded was a little bit on the high side, 75 degrees. Again, this is in a 21, 22 degree ambient room. So yeah, it's not brilliant, but for the capacity you get with a 240mm AIO, it is pretty much what you'd expect to see. And it competes in the same levels as things like the Gelid Phantom Black Edition, the Noctua D15, all those kinds of coolers. They all tend to be in and around that very similar range. So if you want the silence of the water cooling system, and you really do like the BeQuiet stuff, and I actually do like it. The fan's actually done particularly well, very pleased with those. It's a really easy system to set up. I really did appreciate the fact that the wiring for the CPU fans basically just into one header, and all of the other stuff for the lighting and the pump itself just taken care of on a separate SATA connection. I think that's actually pretty genius, and I'd like to see other manufacturers doing that. It does take the kind of the guesswork out of it. Do you connect to the CPU header? Do you connect to the pump header? With this, yeah, totally straightforward. Other than the mounting mechanism, which I guess could do with a little bit of working on, essentially I've got no qualms with this whatsoever. If you were to ask me, is it worth the kind of £85 that it's currently on the market for in the United Kingdom? I'd say yeah, definitely. For £85, this puts itself in is not the cheapest AIO 240mm on the market, and it's definitely not the most expensive, but it is somewhere in that nice middle region. So you get the quality, you get the assurance of obviously BeQuiet being a fantastic brand. It's very, very well made. Everything's very easy to do. It isn't the best performer, but it is darn close. So anyway, let me know what you think of this in the comment section below. If you want to find out more, I'll put some affiliated links in the video description also, so you can check that out for yourselves. But yeah, I think that's going to pretty much wrap this one up. Totally worthwhile getting, and I would definitely recommend it. So I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.